Good morning, aspirants. I hope you are managing to hold your rhythm steady this week because I know exactly how this preparation feels. The quiet excitement of moving closer to the one examination that can reshape the rest of your working life, sitting right next to the grinding pressure of one more day of revision. This is the Sociology Desk, issue 52, built for aspirants preparing for the Union Public Service Commission, the UPSC Sociology Optional. Today, we are going deep into one theme that sits at the heart of Paper 2, population policy, and how a state governs bodies without ever raising its hand. Let us start with the event itself. Earlier this month, the United Nations marked World Population Day, and this year's theme centered on realizing the hopes and aspirations of young people. In India, this coincided with a fresh conversation about redesigning the family planning program so that it speaks the language of choice rather than the language of targets. Now, why does this matter to you as a sociology optional candidate? Because this event sits squarely inside population dynamics in Paper 2, specifically the subunit on population policy and family planning. And it gives you a live, dateable anchor for one of the richest theoretical concepts in the entire syllabus: biopower. Biopower is a concept given to us by the French thinker Michel Foucault. Here is the simplest way to hold it in your head. Older forms of power work through the sovereign's right to take life, to punish, to execute. Modern power works differently. It takes charge of life itself. It manages birth rates, health indicators, and mortality through statistics, through targets, through administrative apparatuses. A family planning program is a textbook example of biopower in action. It is the state treating the fertility of its population as a resource to be measured, planned, and optimized. So when you see India's program being reframed this year around youth aspiration rather than sterilization targets, do not read that as the state stepping back. Read it as biopower changing its vocabulary while keeping its grip. But Foucault's framework alone is not enough for a top scoring answer. And this is exactly the kind of gap that separates an average candidate from a topper. The Indian sociologist Leela Dube gives us the missing piece. In her idea of seed and earth, she shows how our cultural imagination treats women as the passive soil in which reproduction happens, rather than as agents making reproductive decisions. Bring this into your answer, and you immediately show the examiner that you can see what a purely Western framework misses. Even today, even with all this language of choice, the labor, the risk, and the burden of fertility regulation still falls disproportionately on women, visible in how skewed our contraceptive method mix remains toward female sterilization. Let me give you a formulation you can actually write in your answer script and have the examiner recognize instantly. As Foucault argued in The History of Sexuality, modern power took charge of life itself, organizing populations through the calculated management of birth, health, and mortality, rather than through the sovereign right to kill. Hold that sentence in your own words. It is precise. It names the work, and it signals to the examiner that you have read Foucault rather than absorbed him secondhand. Now let me put on the examiner's hat for a moment, because this is the single most important slide in today's brief. Picture two answer scripts responding to a question on population policy. The average script, sitting around 14 out of 20, will describe the history of India's family planning program, mention its launch year, list a few schemes, and close with a generic line about balancing growth and welfare. It is accurate, but it is narration, not sociology. The script that scores 18 or 19 out of 20 does something structurally different. It opens with a claim, not a definition. Something like, population policy is a site where biopower administers the body. It names Foucault's concept precisely: biopower and governmentality, not just state control in general. It uses the current event, this year's reframing around youth aspiration, in exactly one or two sentences as evidence, never as the main content. It then adds a counterthinker, here Leela Dube, to show the gendered blind spot in Foucault's own framework. And it closes by looking forward, arguing that policy must redistribute the reproductive burden, not just change its language. Remember the refrain: the event is your evidence, the theory is your destination. Every mark above 14 is earned by how visibly you make that theory work. Here is a question in the exact shape this could take in Mains 2026. In the light of the recent reframing of family planning around youth reproductive aspirations, critically examine Foucault's concept of biopower as a lens for understanding India's population policy. Notice the architecture. It hands you a live event and asks you to use a named theory to interrogate it. That is precisely the muscle memory you should be training every single day. Let us tie this together quickly. First, biopower describes a shift from the sovereign right to take life toward the calculated administration of life through statistics and targets. Second, India's family planning program, however reframed, remains a biopolitical apparatus rather than neutral welfare. Third, Leela Dube's gendered correction is what completes a genuinely top-scoring answer, because Foucault's framework alone will not carry you into the top band. And fourth, remember always that the examiner is rewarding structure and theoretical precision, never simple narration of the event. That is today's brief. UPSC preparation is long, and some days it will feel like you're repeating the same effort without any visible movement. But the candidates who eventually rank are simply the ones who kept showing up on the days it felt pointless. If you would like the complete answer block, the model answer, and the full quotation arsenal behind today's theme, drop your email in the comments or write to us at team@upscdesk.com and we will share the subscription details. Wishing you a focused week ahead. I will see you in the next brief.